Nice.
Penguins got kicked out, dude.
Oh,
Penguins
they're out,
lost.
huh?
Yeah,
They're
they're out.
out. Oh boy. So are the Suns. So are the Phoenix Suns in basketball. So,
Yeah,
man. But bigger news, we got an amazing show tonight.
I can't
Oh
believe
my
it.
gosh. Mike, we grew up listening to this guy
Yeah.
back in SoCal growing up. And it's just, I mean, after repeated letters, phone calls, voicemails, emails, trying to get a hold of this guy, finally it's happening. What 2 years in the making on this?
I mean, I didn't ask for Greg Mack for 2 years, but like, here's the thing: if Greg Mack would have come on the first episode, he would have been like, "This is a junkie podcast. I ain't never coming back." So, but I will say this, man. Like at first, I'm not gonna lie to you, Adelaide. I thought tonight when I was in the green room sending you news stories, like I was like, dude, if Adelaide's punking me right now, man, this is a really mean joke. Like I really thought that. I was like, bro, if Adelaide's punking me, this is such a mean joke. But dude, it's crazy because like last night Paul Rojas called me.
Uh,
And I haven't talked to that cat for a minute, but me and him used to break dance listening to K Day back in the day. So for those of you who are wondering who we're talking about Greg Mack, who was a radio disc jockey and a program director, hip hop, just the first hip hop radio station in Los Angeles, and brought us so many great artists, and somebody that we listened to as kids. But
yes.
just, I mean, dude, like you got to realize, I think people need to understand. You owe your careers to Greg Mack if you're from the West Coast and you were a hip hop DJ.
Yes. A hip hop artist, a hip hop DJ, a radio jock in the hip hop field. I mean, there's an inspiration for a ton of people, including me. I'm thinking I speak for you too, Mike, when you say this dude's an inspiration. Because and it's crazy. You think about obviously K Day. I mean, seriously, legendary. You know what I'm saying? On an AM signal, nonetheless, and still got the music out there and still had us driving to spots wherever we could tune in the station to hear the music that this guy was smart enough and genius enough to put on the radio for people to hear, and a great voice. He's got that memorable voice that you just know right away,
I mean,
and
magic
super
voice,
humble guy. So I'm
golden voice.
super.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like perfect radio voice. But let's quit shining this guy's boots and bring him on, man. We got to get this dude on here, Greg Mack, ladies and gentlemen. Greg Mack, the legend.
The Mac Attack. Woo!
Hey, what's
Oh
up,
man, Greg Mack.
how's
All
it
right.
going?
So let's start it out. So are you from Texas originally? Is that how this works, or where were you born?
Yeah, I was born in a little city named Emory, Texas, which is East Texas, and ended up moving to Van Alstyne and then San Antonio, which is where I started in radio.
Now, what gets us into radio? I've heard the story, but maybe we could explain that to our
People
listeners.
watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What got me into radio?
Yes,
It was
sir.
interesting because our school had a program. It was really cool program. If you had at least a B average, you could go and apply to work at a job. And if you got the job, you could go there and you didn't have to go to school. And so I was like, wow, I like that program, you know. And so I'd always wanted to explore being a lawyer. And so I tried to get in on that. And they says, well, all the law offices are full. So what about doctor? Well, they're all full. All we have left actually is a radio station. I said, well, sounds good. Send me there. And so I went and applied, and I got it, thinking I was all that, but it was actually affirmative action. They needed a black man, so I kind of jumped right in.
Hey, just like Too Short say, you get in where you fit in, man. Like,
There
that's
you
the
go.
way it goes, man. You know what I mean? And we'll be
Yeah.
talking about him soon. But anyways, so from there we obviously you're blowing up on the radio, and you get a call to come down to K Day. Is that what I'm understanding? From Houston, correct?
Well, I was in San Antonio for after my internship. They gave me a full time job, and the new program director, very racist program director, came in there, and he said, all I want to do is get your in ass out of here.
Oh my goodness.
And
Jeez.
I was like, oh my lord. But the program director that was there that brought me in the first time, he brought me to Corpus Christi, and that's where
Oh,
I actually
nice.
started, doing a DJ shift there. I DJ'd at a club, worked at a TV station, and I got a call from Houston, and they said, hey, we've heard about you, blah blah blah, and they offered me a job. And then I got to Houston. That was in 1980. Went to Los Angeles in '83 to 1580 K-Day. And you guys, y'all say K-Day. You got to remember it's 1580 K-Day. There's a difference. There's a big difference.
Right,
We'll
right.
remember
It's
that
not
next time. We'll remember that
1580
next time.
anymore. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Because
yeah.
well,
Because
for me, K-Day, there's only one K-Day. You know what I mean? Like I only have one K-Day, so I'll remember the moniker of 1580 though. I probably won't.
There you go.
I'll try my hardest, but I don't know if I will. All right, so you're in Houston. Houston's a giant market though. Like we have friends that are called the Mexicans, and they did a morning show in Houston, and they broke a lot of the like Latino rappers like Chingo Bling and Baby Bash and so on and so forth. They're very not as influential as you, very influential young men, but not as influential as you because I want to get to this influence. So we get to Los Angeles in the 80s, and I know the story. I almost want to tell the story, but I want you to tell the story. I almost told the school story, and then I was like, don't do that. So no hip hop, nobody's playing hip hop, nobody's playing rap music, and Greg Mack, they start. Well, Greg, don't make me tell the story. You tell the story, please.
Well, when I first got into radio, let's back up to San Antonio. We were playing a hip hop song, and hip hop back then was considered like novelty. They kind of put it in the Rick D's Disco Duck category,
okay.
Chipmunk category.
Yeah.
They didn't really take it seriously, but we were playing Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper's Delight, and that was my first exposure to hip hop. I was like, hey, this is pretty cool, and we didn't play any in Corpus Christi, but when I got to Houston, Magic 102 was the station. We did play a few hip hop records. They would allow me, my shift was 6 to 10 at night, so they would allow me to play maybe one or two. And so that was kind of, what was happening at that time.
Now, do you guys have a playlist at this point yet, or this is before playlist?
I've been very blessed that throughout my entire career, even going back to the very beginning, I played at least a role of a music director.
Ooh,
and
nice.
So my first several years of radio was rock and roll. We played rock and roll, man. My favorite was the Stones and the Beatles and, Led Zeppelin. And I mean, there were so many rock groups. But what it did is it allowed me to appreciate all types of music. So people, sometimes depending on who's in my car with me, I have to tailor the music because it's not uncommon for me to be rolling with Guns N' Roses,
There's nothing wrong with that, man. Guns N' Roses put out some good records.
Yeah.
I was playing the White Album for my wife one night, and she's not a big music fan, and I told her, I said, this ain't a greatest hits album. I said, every one of these songs is a hit, and this ain't a greatest hits album. You know what I mean? Like, I actually found rock and roll when I was in high school. I had a singing teacher, so I was like, I want an easy A, so I took a singing class. But he introduced us to the Beatles, and I was like, man, this music sounds very enjoyable. And I wanted to be a rock DJ, but they just kind of didn't. They didn't hire these type of cats in the rock world when we were DJs. Like we couldn't, like they weren't good. I wasn't gonna get the job.
Right.
But anyways, getting back to Greg Mack's story, which is way more fascinating than my story. So you're playing a couple hip hop records. We're over in Houston. I mean, once again, Houston's a giant market. Now, when you get called over to LA, how does this work? Like, did somebody call the station? Like, how does this work?
Well, I had the number one show there. Not toot my own horn, but it was very hard for me to go to malls. I would get, mobbed.
You're the celebrity, even more than the music.
Yeah. DJs were celebrities there. When you get to LA, you're not a celebrity as a DJ because you go somewhere and one table there's Eddie Murphy, the other table Denzel Washington. Who the hell cares about Greg Mack? But in Houston, DJs were considered celebrities. We never had to pay to go to any clubs or restaurants. It was just great, But it started kind of evolving there in Houston. I made a good friend back in 1980 named Roger Troutman. You guys might remember.
Yeah.
And I had a very good friend named Charlie Wilson. It was kind of interesting how Charlie Wilson and the Gap Band was coming in at 6, and Roger was coming in at 7 on my show.
Nice.
And it kind of worked out. It kind of worked out differently because Charlie's always late. Roger is always early. So anyway, Roger got there an hour earlier, and so he brings his voice box. If any of you've ever interviewed him, that he always took his voice box. And
Really?
so we're in there on the air and he's playing along to his music, blah, blah, blah. And then Charlie gets there and then they start singing and he's playing and
Together they were singing?
yeah, on the air. And
Holy
so
gosh.
Amazing.
I know. Could you
at the
imagine
end of-
that?
at the end of the show, they said, man, we ought to do a song together. And they started doing this song. And Roger said, oh, man, let's go in the studio. That song became a big hit called Computer Love.
Oh
And
my
Ooh.
gosh.
It was devised on the air.
Huh.
All right, so for any of you squares who never heard that song before,
Right.
that was the roller skate jam when I was a kid.
That was a hold hands
Yeah,
jam right
and it
there.
sounds like this computer love. Dude,
It
I
was
want to be
developed
your
right
man.
on the air.
Zap, come on, bro. Like,
Oh my gosh, dude, that's amazing! Wow.
how big of a Mac was Roger, bro? Did he have just like tons of girlfriends or no?
You know what's people don't believe me when I say, I mean, he did become that way. But when I first met him and Lester Troutman, they were just quiet. They were kind. You know, we'd go to clubs, they wouldn't drink. I said, what do you want? Well, let me get you a drink. Just a glass of water. you know,
This was in Houston or is this in LA now at this point? When
Houston.
okay, well, man, what a beautiful Houston life.
Yeah, they were just good guys in the business, and there were a few people like that I met in Houston that were like Janet Jackson. We met there. New Edition. We met there. They were just nice people.
Man.
Man, I'm just thinking, I'm still on Roger, bro. Don't waste these celebrities. Don't worry, we'll get there. I mean, bro, like his music. You have to be honest with yourself, Adlai. His music is so nice, isn't it?
All that stuff, all that Zap, all that, dude. Yeah, you
All right,
bump
who
that
would you rather
stuff.
listen
Yeah,
to for the like? If you had to cut one out of your ear for the rest of your life.
don't ask.
Oh, okay, never mind. I was gonna say Zap.
Right.
I was gonna say Zapp and Roger or R. Kelly. Who would you have to? You have to cut one of the two of them out of your ears for the rest of your life.
Mike,
Well,
yeah.
I think that's an obvious.
Besides the drama, though, if there was no drama,
I'm getting rid of R.
R.
Kelly.
Kelly
bro.
made some
I
good
can't-
music,
I
though.
know, dude, but I can't
Made
live
some good
without
music.
that Roger sound,
Oh,
homeboy.
yeah.
I can't do
Man.
it.
and you talk Roger Zapp too. You're talking hip hop too, because
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of West Coast used
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of Zapp and
100%,
Roger, man. And so that's a
100%.
whole. Some East Coast too used it too. So man, that's amazing.
I
And this
know.
is in Houston still.
I know, that's
Woo.
nuts. All right, so how do we get? Let's get us now. Well,
So how did I get to LA? Is
Yeah,
what you're gonna
yeah,
ask.
I guess. But the problem
I-
is that like you've already met these monsters. I wouldn't even go to LA. I'd be like, nah, man, I don't want to go to LA.
I'm good. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, no, I used to see a friend of mine. He was a DJ that worked at K-Day. His name was JJ Johnson. And JJ was always in all the trades. He knew everybody. He was hanging out with. I said, oh, man, that's me. I need to go out there. But the competing station there in Houston did an air check on my show because he was trying to get me out of the market. You know,
Because you were that good.
I had phenomenal ratings.
Mhm.
And so he actually sent my tape to 1580 K-Day. And within a couple of weeks, they called me. Hey, we heard your tape. Would you like to come to Los Angeles? And so I was like, well, yeah. So I was telling my friends in Houston, they were like, oh, don't go to LA. LA will chew you up, spit you out, man. And I'm sitting here looking at the money I was making in Houston to be so popular. I was just barely scraping by.
Oh, were you still having to do
so-
clubs and stuff to like pay the rent and everything, or?
I still do clubs today.
I know, but I'm saying, you know, there's a difference, right, Greg Mack? Besides
Well-
doing clubs because you enjoy it, or doing clubs, guys, you got to pay the rent to stretch the extra.
Well, you know what's interesting is back then we didn't really get paid to appear at clubs. Clubs just took care of us. You know, we never had to wait in line. We had
Oh,
private section, all the drinks and
Status kind of thing.
status.
Yeah,
So
okay.
it was just scraping by. But then when you know you got the call from LA and they're offering you 3 times what you're making in Houston, I'm like, no decision here. I said, so the way I looked at it is I says, well, if what they're saying is true, they're just going to chew me up and spit me out. I'll just, as long as I can work 6 months, I've made the same as if I worked here for a whole year.
hey, that ain't so bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
I decided to go for it. Here's what I didn't figure out is that the taxes in California were,
Oh,
Oh, and the cost
Criminals.
of living, right?
yeah. And,
he came from a Republican state to a Democrat state.
you
Is
know,
Hey, Greg, in your experience working in radio for as long as you have, like Mike and I have, it's been 25 years plus. Does it feel like they pay you as little as possible?
I think that radio, I mean, this is kind of a long answer, but it's the truth, which
Mm,
is that because it's so corporate now, the corporations,
mm.
um, it's not like you're really competing. They're real music oriented. They want you to talk and shut up and
Different
just
now. Yeah.
keep it stepping. You know, unless you're doing mornings, which when if you let me do mornings, I can kind of get off into my thing. But the rest of the day, they just want you to say, and that's so and so, and then and that's it.
Yeah.
It's not
And
like
go.
it's not like it used to be. The corporations have really cut people's pay because they know they can. If you don't like it, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there
But we
are
would
some
have worked for free
jobs
though
that
at
make
some
pretty good
point.
money. Hmm?
Yeah. There was a time when Mike and I would work basically free, I felt like, because
Hmm.
we wanted to be in radio so bad. I feel
Hmm.
like working in the radio today, business today, you don't see that as much.
Greg
Right.
Mack, Adlai and I used to split a $50 talent fee. We used to,
There you
they,
go.
would-
Hey.
they would book the Chino brothers. They get a $250 talent fee for us. They keep 200 and made us split 50 between the two of us. But we
Right.
wanted to DJ so bad we didn't care. All right, come on, let's get to the good stuff. All right,
Hey,
so
dude, I'm gonna tell you a quick story. I used to
yeah,
go
please.
because one of my favorite things is going to schools and talking to the kids. And so I was in San Antonio. I went to one of the schools, and I guess because I sounded white on the radio. So anyway, I walk in and I hear the kids whispering, "He's black, he's black." And so first thing I said is, "Yes, I'm black." Uh, my program director in San Antonio, he said, "Look, if you want a long career in radio, you need to just be generic when you're on the air. Don't talk street, don't talk white, don't just be generic so that when people listen to you, they won't know, what race you are." And so I kind of subscribed to that. Not that I was ashamed of being black, but I understood what he was talking about because I could work any format. But if I was leaning one way, I was leaning toward working only that format.
Well,
I
and you
could
did
I could
work
have
every
talked the
format.
rock and roll talk. I could have talked the country talk. I could have
Yeah,
talked
you worked at a country station, you worked at a rock station, like you
Mhm.
put in your bones.
Right.
Uh, but anyways, so yeah, let's get back to Los Angeles. Here we go. So at this time in Los Angeles, nobody's playing hip hop music, nobody's playing rap music, and Greg, please tell the story because I'm going to tell your story, and then then I'm gonna feel bad that I tell your story.
When I first got to LA, 1580 KDA, out of the 5 black stations that were there at that time, you had Cute, KAs, KJLH, KGFJ, and KDA. KDA was number 5 out of all these stations. And so the program director, Jack Patterson, and the general manager, Ed Kirby, set me down when I got there. They said, "Hey, we understand you've got some programming experience in the music side, and was wondering if you would be open to helping us. Do you have any ideas?" I said, "Sure, I'll help you. And yes, I'll have you an idea by tomorrow." I didn't know what the idea was going to be, but when I moved out there, I was living in the heart of South Central LA. I mean, in the hood. My mom had a couple of apartments behind her house, and so I was staying at one of them. So when I get home, I opened up the window, and all I heard was rap music. I heard Curtis Blow. I heard Run DMC. Of course, anything Sugar Hill. That's all everybody was playing in their cars. And I said, "That's it." And so I went to the station the next day. I said, "Okay, this is what I want to do." And so when I told them I wanted to start, you know, putting some rap music in, they looked at each other like, "What? Are you crazy?" I said, "Yeah, that's what your city, that's what everybody's listening to in the street, blah, 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 blah." And so the general manager, he kind of laughed. He says, "Yeah, well, let us think about it." And an hour later, they call me back in. "All right, we're going to give this a try."
Man, that's
Okay.
that. What
Within 90 days, we went from 5th to 2nd within 90 days.
It
Wow.
was just such a brilliant idea, though, Greg Mack, because if you went to the swap meets, like
Mhm.
everybody was
Mm.
selling hip hop music. You know what I mean? And that's where you'd have to get it. You'd either get it at the swap meet or like Johnny's Records. Like you couldn't go to a regular record store and just buy rap music. But if you were in the swap meet, it was like, "Oh, bro, look at this mixtapes. Oh my gosh, guys come into your high school with mixtapes, but they will rap on it too. You know what I mean? Have like Joe Cooley, but then them rapping as well. It's like, so yeah, I mean, back in those days, you could not get hip hop. So Now comes the brilliant idea of Greg Mack about getting a DJ crew together, and we go to meet Uncle Jam's army. I'm fast forwarding you on this story, Greg, because you know I already know it, but I'm not going to tell it. Go ahead.
You think you know it.
I know that. I want to
You
hear the
think you
good
know.
parts of it, bro. Come on, that's what I'm trying to dig.
I'll tell you this: there's credit that needs to be given. Within a week being there, I went to a party. If you remember the rocker Ray Parker Jr., and he had just opened up a new studio, Mayor Ray Khan Studios. So I went to the grand opening, and I met a singer named Barry White. You guys heard of Barry White?
Holy cow!
And so
Wow.
I'm talking to Barry White, and he just starts laughing. And I said, well, "What are you laughing about?" Because I forgot that I still had kind of a Texas accent when I first got there, and I was like, "Hey y'all, how y'all doing?"
Yeah.
And he just starts laughing, and we start talking, and he said, "Look, I'm gonna give you a bit of advice." He said, "Control this city. Don't let the city control you.
Mm.
Control your money. Don't let your money control you, and you'll be just fine, brother." And he gave me his phone number. He said, "Here, talk to me, and I'll help you through this thing." And Barry and I, throughout his lifetime, we talked quite a bit.
Holy
What a lot
God!
of people don't know is that Barry was a gang member
What?
when he was
I didn't
young.
know that.
I didn't
He
know
actually-
that about Barry
He
White.
actually did some jail time, which is where he decided he wanted to sing. But Barry kind of educated me throughout the years on gang life, because if you didn't understand it, which I didn't know, where I grew up in Texas, when we said cuz or blood, it was a
Oh
term.
no, you
of
can't be
endearment.
doing that type of stuff. Yeah, no, don't be doing that.
So Barry said, "Oh no, you can't wear this color to that neighborhood. You can't wear that color to this neighborhood." And he kind of taught me the streets, because what I was about to jump off into, I needed to know the streets. I didn't know, and I think that that's why a lot of the rappers had a lot of respect for me, because they were like, he's too naive to understand, so we're not gonna mess with him. And plus, I started playing the music they like.
Yeah, you're playing their records, but
Yeah.
now that is phenomenal. That is a great story, Greg Mack. So Barry White taught
Yes.
Greg Mack how to survive in
In
South
South
Central.
Central.
In LA.
Exactly, like that. How I did that. How to survive in South Central. I mean, like that is phenomenal. That is like just
Yes.
that there we could spend 9 hours talking about.
Right.
But I only want to ask one question. Was Barry White a Mac or what, bro? Like that. I mean, I'm probably gonna be asking you this about a lot of them. So don't get mad.
Barry White's wife was a very nice lady, Glodine. I remember asking Barry because she had nails probably that long. I mean,
Holy cow.
they were. I can't even get them all on the screen, but she had really long nails. I remember asking Barry, "How did she go to the bathroom?" Barry just fell out. And, I guess there was a method, but anyway, Barry, I never saw him in that role that you're talking about. If he did, he was down low with it, but he
I
was
mean, his
just
music. That's why I'm asking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Once again, another great crooner you're bringing up. One of these cats. He opens his mouth, and I mean,
Ladies swooning,
yeah,
I'm sure.
exactly. Ladies
Yeah.
are just like he's
Yeah,
like honey to ladies. You know, just like,
like,
it's just-
"Hey, Greg, hey."
exactly. You'll never find. Just like, you know what I mean? Like,
No, that's Snoop Dogg. I got you.
all right, so man, that's incredible. And you know what? What great advice that guy gave you, huh?
Mhm.
That is phenomenal.
Yeah,
And
amazing.
you know what's nice is
When I left the meeting, because I was riding with this record guy that I just met, and I kept saying, "I'm going to control this city. I'm going to control the city." And so he looks at me like, "What are you saying?" I said, "I'm going to control this city." And he looks at me like, "What an ego!" What a big.
that you
didn't know
had to
that I
have
was
that
quoting-
ego, though.
quoting Barry,
That's drive. That's motivation,
You
man.
had to have it, because if not, if you went into that intimidated, it'd be like going to box against Tyson intimidated. You can't do some stuff like that. You got to be ready.
Right.
You know what I mean? But what I was gonna say is how Noe G says hello to you,
What's up,
Greg.
Noe G?
Hey, Noe G.
Sorry, man, I got tossed off. The thing about it is Barry White's this, I mean, gigantic international superstar, and he took the time to talk to this radio kid from Texas. And as DJs, we all know, a lot of times DJs are come and go. So like for him to take that kind of time, even though you could have just been a come and go kind of guy, and you could have popped off to him like, "Don't tell me that, old man. I'll do what I want." You know what I mean? Like I mean, seriously, because if I'm Barry White, I'd be like, I'm Barry White. I don't need
Right.
to teach anybody anything.
Nah, man. Barry wouldn't like that. I'd go to his studio. He had a studio behind his house, and sit there and listen to some of the songs he was working on. And I was just, you have to understand, I used to pay for tickets to go see Barry White.
Oh yeah,
Right.
Oh yeah,
Right.
of course.
Sitting in his
Of
studio
course.
with him. Later, he introduced me to a singer named Isaac Hayes.
Oh my
So
gosh.
to be sitting in a room with Barry White and Isaac Hayes, you would think that it would be stuffy, but it wasn't. They were just as real as it cracking jokes, and I mean, I that people always say, well, what was the most memorable moment of your career? That day hanging out with Barry White and Isaac Hayes.
Wow.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Ooh.
I couldn't even imagine, dude. That's the problem. If I was a young single guy and I'm hanging out with Barry White and Isaac Hayes, I'd be like, "Can we please go somewhere where girls are, so
Where
I
people
tell
can
them-
see us.
Yeah, so I can tell them I know you. You know what I mean?
They're not going to believe us. There's no social media at this point. Who's
Well,
got the
believe me,
disposable camera?
at that time, I didn't need their help with girls. I had too many at that time.
Oh, okay, never mind then.
If anything, they wanted to hang
That's
out with me.
That's
don't
Greg
know.
Mack from
Two,
K-Day.
two greatest crooners of that time, man. Like, oh my gosh.
So 3 of you rolling out would have been trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what it showed and taught me is that for hip hop, for me to be able to do what I was about to get off into, it helped having that father figure, and I kind of adopted that, and that's why
nice.
the rappers would actually get upset with me if I would use a cuss word, because they respected me and they looked at me as a father figure. I remember Hutch from Above the Law, if you remember that group.
Oh yeah.
I was cussing one day, somebody pissed me off, and Hutch was like, "No, Greg, no, you're no, don't you ever cuss. I don't look at you that way, man. You can't cuss." And so
That's
Yeah.
phenomenal.
I didn't cuss around rappers no more.
And Hutch saying that from Above the Law is interesting too. 'Cause
Yeah.
Above the Law. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang. Yeah.
So-
go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was gonna say, so I also know this part of the story, and I'm gonna lead you into it, Greg Mack, because I don't want to tell it. So let's get, because I want to get to Uncle Jam's Army, but you're just breaking off these nuggets of gold for us. So
Yes.
now we're getting lost in this, like we're watching a podcast.
Well, I'm trying to give you the foundation. Now, the Uncle Jam's Army. This is interesting because probably a couple of weeks after being in LA, my sister had told me, she says, I want you to go and see this Uncle Jam's Army dance. And I was like, what? Because that's the first time I ever heard the name. What is Uncle Jam's Army? She's like, no, they give big dances and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting here like, well, I guess I should go. How else am I going to know what's going on in the streets? And so we walk in and I'm just amazed. 10,000 kids, no performers, just DJs. And I had never in my life seen anything like that. And so I immediately tuned in. I'm like, oh, wow, who's the promoter? I got to talk to him. We got to tie in with this. So I finally, after going through a whole bunch of people, ran into Roger Clayton, who was running Uncle Jam's Army. And I said, Roger, I just got into town. I'm doing this new thing at 1580 K-Day, and sure would like to tie into what you're doing. And, it will work for you because it's radio. We could do some stuff, and you would give us a tie into the streets. And he just started laughing. And I said, well, why are you laughing? And again, he goes back to a Texas accent thing. He said, look here, country boy. He said, look at this crowd. Does it look like I need effing radio?
He said, Mother
And I
effer,
said-
does it look like I need radio?
And I said, well, okay, all right. So my feelings were hurt because his friends started laughing at me. But I've never seen roadblocks. I only see hurdles.
Yeah.
So when he said that, I'm like, okay, well, it's about to go down because I'm gonna figure this out, and I did.
Yeah. And just for the DJs out there, the mixer DJs, who was in Uncle Jam's Army? What DJs were there?
At that time it was Bobcat, Egypt, Battle Cat.
Some of the sickest DJs in the LA area. Yes.
Yeah,
No
but
question.
Greg Mack has something for him, bro.
Ooh.
So that's where I'm trying to get him
That's-
going. Greg Mack has something for him. Real quick before we get to that, and I'm real excited to get to that. Was Isaac Hayes a gangster or what?
I didn't know as much about Isaac. I didn't know as much. I just knew that he was. How you have. let me ask you. You know how you have your certain friends that y'all can just sit down and just start bagging on each other and talking, and you're not worried about who's listening. You know what I mean? He's just one of those guys.
Oh, just busting balls and clowning all the time. Good for him.
Yeah, yeah.
He does strike me as a gangster. I'm not gonna lie to you. Doesn't he strike you as a gangster, Isaac Hayes, a little bit?
I wouldn't mess with him.
If it's Isaac, if someone said
Barry, after Barry got out of jail, he didn't go back to gang life. You know, so let's make it clear he wasn't a gangster.
Yeah.
In his earlier days.
No, I got you. So in his younger days, he was a gangster. But if someone asked me, like, if they're like between Isaac Hayes and Barry White, who do you believe was a gangster in their younger days? I definitely would have thought it was Isaac Hayes. I wouldn't have thought that about Barry White. I always looked at Barry White as like a respectable crooner who just got all the chicks excited when his voice came out, man. Like, that dude was so good.
But you know what he told me when he was in jail? He wasn't singing then. He said, while I was in there, they had the radio on, and I kept hearing Elvis Presley.
Huh.
And he said, you know, this guy can't sing. Why is he making all this money? Why are they screaming? He said, I'm going to start singing. So it motivated him when he got out of jail to start singing. True story. But wow. I don't know that about Isaac because we never had that conversation. But anyway,
let's talk about what we did about this Uncle Jam's Army situation there, Greg Mack, and blow everybody's mind. How do we remedy this? Because we need a DJ crew.
Yeah. Well, we used to have what was called music meetings, where all the record companies would come and present their new product to us, and then we'd listen to it. Sometimes, most of the time, I would listen to it while they were there. And then I remember, because I was trying to find a DJ, a guy named Lonzo came in, and Lonzo said, hey, you know, I got this little project that I'm doing with my guys. We call it World Class Wrecking Crew. We got the song, I believe it was Surgery. And he said, I want you to hear it. So I listened to it. I said, oh, okay, that's different. I like it. I said, you know, you do a club, because he was telling me about a club he was doing at that time, Eve After Dark, and also Dudo's in Compton. I said, you do clubs? I said, you know, and I told him the situation that happened with Uncle Jam's Army. I said, I want to start my own DJ group. Also, I want to do a thing. I want to call it the Traffic Jam. Traffic Jam, which now, as you know, every station has a traffic jam. But back then there was not one. So I said, yeah, I want to do like a mix for people that are driving home, and, you know, let's see how it sounds and stuff. He said, well, why don't you use my DJs? And I'm like, are they any good though? You know, are they any good? He said, yeah, I'll bring them up. And so he brings them up next week, and it's Dr. Dre and DJ Yella, you know. And
are they any good? The multi-billion-dollar platinum artist? I hope he's good enough for your little AM radio show. You know?
Trust me, he wasn't platinum then.
Yeah,
but, he let me hear his tape, and I was like, oh, my Lord, I had never in my life heard something like that. It wasn't mixing. It was actually production. You know, he would actually lay down a beat for, 30 minutes. And then he'd play another beat over it for 30 minutes. And so it'd be like eight different layers of music.
Used Lonzo's 4-track for that.
I remember that. The little Tascam 4-track. Yeah. I heard something about that too. Yeah.
That's nuts.
Amazing.
So what was it like? Like, how much younger is Dre than you?
At that time, I was about 22, 23. Dre was probably about 18, 19, something like that.
So was he like? Did he seem like a little kid, or did he seem like a? Because I mean, 18 in the 80s and 90s was a little different than 18 now. 18 you were kind of a man back then. So like, did you see him as a younger person, or did you see him as a peer?
No, I didn't see him either way. I just saw him as a damn good DJ. I didn't really know. He was a very nice guy. Yella, who I'm still friends with, is a very nice guy. They just seemed like, regular folks, which, they were. And so anyway, we did it. In return for them giving me the mixes, I would mention their club because K-Day didn't want to pay him to do it. Right. And so we did that for several months before they couldn't do it anymore. And they, kind of got off into their music, got serious about their music.
Because you were helping push Eve After Dark and Dudo's from there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. How were those clubs doing before K-Day?
They're doing okay, but the
Okay.
first one that we did there, because we did a live broadcast from there, the first one that we did was New Edition, and it
Woo.
was so packed in there. I just called up New Edition. Hey guys, I need your help. We're doing this, blah blah blah. Oh, okay, cool. We'll be over. Uh, it was so many kids there. It was just, And then what we did is every week, the artists that we played, the hip hop artists we played, would come and perform live because it was live on the air. You don't hear that anymore on the radio.
That's
but
bananas.
The entire show, the DJs, the rappers, the singers, it was all live on the air.
How old are New Edition at this point? Is this like young New Edition, or is this like a little more mature New Edition?
A little more mature. When I met them in Houston, they were teens.
Okay.
Candy Girl.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. Cool.
This was probably 6-7 years later.
Wow, that is bananas.
Oh, so they were established playing the club for you at that
They
point.
They still weren't established. They had
Mr. Telephone Man.
Yeah, they were.
What was the one? What was their big one? Candy Girl was their big one, huh? Was it?
You are my world.
Yeah. Mr. Telephone Man. What was the other one?
They have a huge category.
Yeah, a huge catalog. But I'm trying to remember their early stuff. So yeah, I mean that's insane. So now Dre and Yella, they're going to start NWA. So at that point, you have to replace these DJs. This is going to blow your mind, Adley.
Yeah.
Actually, I decided that I wanted to start my own DJ group.
Yeah, that's true.
And because those were Lonzo's DJs, and so I was talking to DJ Bobcat. I tried to get Bobcat to leave Uncle Jam's Army and come to me. And he said, nah, he said, you should do your own thing and create your own thing. And, I don't really want to leave there. He said, what are you going to call the guys? I says, well, that's Uncle Jam's Army. I'm going to be the Mack Attack Marines. We're going to war. And so
get rid of the Marines. Get rid of the Marines.
He said, no. He said, you ought not do that because then people will think you're biting. He said, call them the Mix Masters. It's the Mix Masters. The Mack Attack Mix Masters. That was the name, he said. He said, so you do that. So I started looking for Mix Masters. I was talking to a rapper at that time who nobody really knew about named Kid Frost.
You hear about that, Adley? What about that?
Amazing. Yes.
Kid Frost says, I got just the guy. Just the guy. So it's this Cuban kid, man. He's bad. He's good. And he brought him to the station, and there was a guy named Tony G.
Yeah, Tony G's ill. Yeah.
Tony G, I had never seen somebody take a 12-inch record and bend it in half while he's mixing without breaking the record. He could mix, scratch. He was an all-around DJ. He fit in whether it was a black crowd, a Latin crowd, a house crowd, a funk. He could play at any event, any age. And so I thought he was perfect. I brought on another DJ, Jammin' Gemini. Jammin' Gemini, the reason I liked him is because he gave us that presence with the older clubs. We were lacking. The clubs where the adults went.
Man, you're 23 at this point, and you're putting together this murderer's row.
Right.
Man, you're like, how do you have this forethought, man? When we were 23, I was eating bologna like off the floor in our apartment. Like, what's going on around? Like,
dude, I lived it and breathed. I was there at that station at 9 a.m. till 2 the next morning. I lived there, and so I worked hard. I knew every song that came out because one thing I learned through all of that is that the major record companies do not put out the best song. Or back then, they didn't put out the best song. They left the best song on the album because they wanted you to buy the album. And so I listened to every album to find that best song that they didn't want to put out yet. It used to piss them off. And
there's always a third track.
Why are you playing that song? That's not our single. Well, it's the best song. I'm playing the best song. I broke a lot of B-sides. And, anyway, the other DJ, I brought on 3 right away. DJ Joe Cooley, because I brought on Joe Cooley because
that's who I wanted you to hear.
I needed a strictly battling DJ. And I needed somebody that couldn't out scratch. He was more for show, and he was damn good on the radio too.
Yeah.
So that was my starting crew. Henry G came on, and Ralph M, Trey Ski. I mean, one of the DJ M Walk, who's one of the best. One of the things with the mix masters, and I haven't named them all, but they created this thing where every kid in LA wanted to be a mix master.
Yeah.
So all the rappers, when they would get big, they would take my DJ on tour, and so I had to find another one. I had to keep having competitions because they kept taking my DJs. So that's kind of how we started.
Rodney O, dude, how dope is that, man?
Yeah, having Joe Cooley and having these dudes on the roster too. And you mentioned the traffic jam earlier. That's that 5 o'clock traffic jam. And then it just became where we mixed even more because we had Friday.
Yeah, we started a show. I wanted to do a Saturday night mix show.
Yeah.
And K-Day wouldn't let me. Well, they said, well, you can do it, but we're not going to pay the DJs. And so, and plus, unless you get a sponsor, we're not gonna. It doesn't make any sense if it doesn't make money. And so,
right.
I was able to get Monica Lynch of Tommy Boy Records to get Tom Silverman to sponsor it, and so that got us on the air, and we followed that up with Violet Brown because Warehouse Records, as you said earlier, the major record stores wouldn't carry hip hop. Violet came in and changed all of that. Wow. And so she immediately became a sponsor. And so K-Day allowed us to do the Mixmaster show after that.
Oh, wow.
I owe that to those two ladies.
Every one of these stories could be a book. Isn't it, Adley? Adley wants to tell you his K-Day story, Greg Mack, and we've told it on the show several times, but I think it's funny. Go ahead, Adley.
It would be like, because I started getting into it so late 80s. I got my first pair of turntables, and K-Day was really the only place to go to for hip hop for years, and then the other stations started doing it more. But I remember you'd be like, I gotta hear the new hip hop, because when you go to the record store and you're a 16-year-old kid on a budget, you kind of like, it's got to be a gem if I'm dropping it. However, you listen to K-Day, and I'd go on dates in my dad's Buick, and I'd be like, all right, we'll stop at Tommy's, and we're gonna pull up in the parking lot right here and just listen to K-Day, and just eat Tommy's, and the girls would be like, what are we doing here in the parking lot? I'm like, shh. Listen to the Mixmaster show.
Listen to the Mixmaster show.
And that's all I wanted to hear was like, I just want to hear the mixing, and Greg Mack and stuff too. And you even did some great interviews. I don't know if you're gonna remember this or not. You're interviewing King T, and he what was his line? The rap impresario, Majestic T, and you're like, man, you've been hitting the thesaurus, huh? And I don't know if you remember that or not, but it was one of the funny moments on the radio, because King T, from head to toe, gangster, whatever, and you just like kind of, I don't want to say call them out, but you're just kind of like having fun with them, and it was just so beautiful to see that and great to hear that, man.
King T, his first record was on my label. I had a label called Mack Daddy Records. And I produced, or I didn't produce, DJ Pooh produced a song for it called Bass. And so that came out on Mack Daddy Records before Capitol took him from me. Wow. Dude, here's the thing. A lot of these things I'm telling you, those stories, it would take an hour just for each one to break it down.
We'll make time. We'll make time, man.
I know. Like each one of these stories, I'm like, we are leaving so much on the table. Like we
I don't want to tell you everything. You got to wait for mine.
Hey, got to wait for the movie.
Don't worry about it. Yeah. Your movie's coming out. The 1580 K-Day documentary's coming out, and you're producing all of these things, right, Greg Mack?
When you say coming out, it's probably a few years away.
Okay.
But let's put it to you this way. I've been working on trying to get it out for about 10 years, and we're just now getting funding. So we're still in the early stages, but you can anticipate a podcast, a scripted podcast, which tells the story as well as you can in 8 episodes. And then there will be a ebook. Some of the biggest names in the entertainment business will be narrating it.
Holy cow.
You can look for a TV series. You can look for a movie and the book. Because let me tell you something. And I was telling Adley this yesterday. I said, it's funny, the so-called his stories that are out there.
Yeah.
And so many stories are inaccurate and nobody really knows. Now, I'm not so naive to think that K-Day didn't affect 1580 K-Day. Look at me.
Yeah, see? It's
It
hard,
didn't,
huh?
it didn't affect people different ways. And so there's probably 100 people that could tell their side of the 1580 K-Day story. But it was me that created all that. So I felt like in order to get the true story out, I've got to do this. I've always been one of those people that I don't like looking back, because I feel like you can't go forward if you're looking back.
Yeah.
But when you see all these mistruths out there and these so-called his stories, I mean, my son, when he was in high school, they were doing a study on Tupac. And just tell you how old I am, one of the events they were discussing, I was actually at.
Oh, yeah.
So
Doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's
he
Pac.
called me and he said, Dad, this is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, no. Here's what really happened. So I broke him down, told him the story. He wrote it up. He was all excited. And he called me the next day. He said, I got an F. I said, you got an F? The teacher said, that's not what the book says. And I said, wow. So the book is wrong. You're right. I mean, so I'm just saying there's a lot of his stories that I want to correct.
I mean, Greg Mack, you could have way longer than an 8-series podcast, but when this podcast comes out, I'm 1,000% listening to it, because that's going to be the best podcast I've ever heard in my whole life. All right.
Well, let's hope so.
Bobby, Jimmy, and the Critters. How does this come about?
Russ Parr, who's still on the air, he's on about 70 radio stations. Russ was one of the most talented, genius DJs at that time. And one of the characters on his show was Bobby Jimmy.
That was so funny.
Bobby Jimmy was this, really ignorant, wannabe street guy. And, he decided he wanted to do a rap career. And so Bobby Jimmy basically was the black
Weird Al, yeah.
Weird Al.
Yeah.
And so he did all these funny songs, and he's pissed the New York guys off when he did that New York rapper thing.
Yeah, remember that song?
Oh, right.
I got a New York rapper. He thinks he can rhyme. Like, but when he did the voices, though, man, when he did like LL's voice, everything, he sounded exactly like him. I was like, dude, Bobby Jimmy, that was the thing. Is like, you're right. He was Weird Al for kids from the urban area. Kids that were breakdancing, brown kids. Like, we love that Bobby. Oh my gosh, I love that Bobby Jimmy.
Dude, I got Roaches on vinyl.
Yeah,
I love that song.
I got Somebody Farted on vinyl.
Yeah.
Which, let's get it started. I got a couple.
But then he did LA Rapper too. Do you remember that record? Don't you have
I don't think I have that one, but I remember the song. Yeah.
New York Rapper was so funny. He was doing the LL Cool J part. What the hell?
Right.
All right. So now was he just a cut up all the time? Was it like you just couldn't stop laughing around him, or?
He was a character. But here's the funny thing about it, because he would get me if it was just me and him. But when we get on stage and we start cracking on each other, I'd tear him a new one. I was good on stage, but he was better in the studio. I always told people I don't really think it was my voice that got me over in radio. I think it's because I was able to relate to people on the radio, and I could, it was the personality thing. You got a nice spirit, Greg Mack. I promise you that. Like, I'm very happy right now that this is where I am. But please continue. I apologize. No. I was just praising Russ. We had a great talent. I mean, Jack Patterson, J.J. Johnson, Lisa Canning. We had some very, very talented Steve Woods, Don Tracy, talented people there. We had this one character when we started doing the hip hop, and I say character, but he was our news guy. His name is Lee Marshall, and may he rest in peace. But Lee Marshall took on a character during the news called King News. And so King News would talk about all the gangbangers and how stupid they were, he would start the newscast like, this stupid gangbanger, And so all the gangs would listen, because they were like, oh, my Lord, he's talking about me. But, all right. We just had so much talent there.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. Obvious. I mean, wonderful station. I mean, what a wonderful 20s to look back on, to be like, you started hip hop, man, in the West Coast. No matter what anybody says. But I do want to get to a story that I heard you allude to on a different podcast. Can you tell us the story by the time LL Cool J came to Los Angeles and got booed?
I don't. I'm trying to remember
You
when
and
he got.
Lonzo were talking about it.
I think you're talking about someone else. LL Cool J. Um, I remember when Russell Simmons was starting Def Jam Records, and he had brought LL Cool J's record to me, a song called "I Need a Beat."
Yeah.
I need you to play this, man. It's this new kid, and da 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 da. LL Cool J. All right, Russell. Because Russell, we'd done a lot of stuff together already, and so we put it on, and it exploded, and so we started bringing LL out to do a lot of events. I don't remember that story of him
Well,
getting.
maybe I got it confused, but if I go back and I listen to it, I'm gonna put a bad review on that one. I'm gonna say that never happened. Don't put this in this good man's mouth. He loved
I
LL
can
Cool J.
I can tell you who got booed was Mr. Magic, the DJ out of New York, and
Yeah.
Huh.
and it wasn't anything because when he came out to LA, because people loved him, we had a shared admiration, and people knew him from the song he did with Houdini, Magic's Wand, and stuff like that. So he came out, and I took him to Skateland, which was a skating rink in the Blood area of town, and he first thing he says when he gets on the mic again, because he didn't know any better, he says, "What's up, cuz?"
Oh no.
Oh boy. Oh
Yeah, that's
boy.
not good.
The place got quiet. I mean, it was
boy.
just silence, and you could hear the gang members say, "Did he just say cuz?"
Oh boy.
Oh hell no!
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
they started booing and rushing the stage, and we had to rush him out of the back door and get him out of there.
That-
He didn't
that
know
is-
what he did. He didn't know what he did.
Yeah.
He didn't mean to. But that's the only time I can remember booing.
I think you know what. I'm gonna go back and listen to the podcast. I think I remember the podcast, and I think I remember last time you're like, I don't remember the story, so I probably shouldn't have brought it up. I apologize, but I do want to talk about the Fat Boys. What were
L's
those
my
dudes
friend.
like?
I have nothing but love for L.
Good for LL. What were the Fat Boys like?
Fat Boys were cool. They were funny. When they'd come to the station, we'd just be cracking jokes, and they were eating all the time, and you couldn't help. There's certain people you just can't help but laugh when you're around them, and that was the Fat Boys. Biz Markie was like that too.
Yeah, boy.
You just couldn't help but laugh when you're around them.
What was the Biz like? Like when did
You know what? Biz was cool. Biz was riding off of Roxanne Shante when she came out, and so he would come out with her. It would be Roxanne Shante, Biz, and then there was these other two kids that used to hang with them, and they'd always come with us named Big Daddy Kane
Wow.
and
what he just said.
and Jay Z. And so they would always hang out with us. Obviously, at that time, nobody really knew who they were. I didn't really know. I just knew that Big Daddy Kane would read me some of the lyrics he wrote, and I'd be like, "Man, why don't you rap?" "Oh, I don't know. Come on, dude." So he ended up rapping. And little did I know
Wow.
when they said, "Oh, this is Jay-Z," I'm like, "Oh, okay, whatever." Cool. Nice to meet you. I was nice to him, because I'm just that kind of person, nice to everyone. But I didn't know it was gonna be Jay-Z.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
you were trying to hang out with Bismarck. You're like, no, man, Bismarck's over there. Whatever. What was your name again?
It's,
Jeff T.
last time I spoke with Jay-Z, he told me my life story. One thing I can say about that guy is he is a true historian of the business, and so he
Wow.
told me he knew more about me. That he knew things I'd forgotten. He's a true historian of the business.
Wow.
That's
Yeah,
phenomenal.
amazing. Yeah, I want to ask about you being the music director, program director too, because I feel like even when Mike and I were in radio, we were just jocks. He was morning show and stuff. But still, people would be like, "Hey, here's my demo, here's my track."
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, just on a day-to-day basis, how much music did you receive?
Great
I mean,
question.
how do you go through all
Well,
that?
let me try and explain to you the strategy.
Mm.
What I learned after getting the hip hop thing going is that if I was really going to attract the Latin audience, which is the majority of my listeners at 1580, and throughout my career, I've been supported more by the Latin audience than any other audience. And so I went to this club downtown called the Casa Camino Real, which is where I met Henji and Evil E. They were DJs there at this
Nice.
all Latin crowd,
Nice.
but they were playing this music. I said, "What is that called? This is high energy, high energy." And so I said, "Oh, okay. Well, I want to play some of this on the station." So lo and behold, we created a whole nother format. It was freestyle.
Yeah.
And we broke artists like Trinier and Debbie Deb and the Cover Girls and Expose and Lisa and Cult Jam. That whole tour is still selling out arenas today.
Oh man.
Yep.
I started mixing those in with the hip hop. So all of a sudden, we had a multi-pronged attack between freestyle, hip hop, and R&B. And we started doing events with them. We did a show right after the Mixmaster show called the High Energy Show, which we used to tape at the radio station, but so many people started showing up for the taping. We had like we had 100 girls there at the studio wanting to be on record to be on the show, and our general manager came back late one night and he says, "Oh hell no, everybody get out!" So we actually had to start taping the show at the club Casa Camino Real. So on Tuesday nights we would take a recorder over there, record the show. 500 people were showing up just to record their voice on the show.
Oh my god!
It was just something like you've never seen. You've never seen that like.
I mean, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine being Greg Mack today, because I feel like people probably still today are like, "Hey man, here's my demo. Here's my demo." Do people still do that to you today?
Yeah, let me get to that part. So the thing was that I then and I had an open door policy. You didn't have to wait till music days. It's like if you had a good record, bring it to me. And like I told you, I took it upon myself to listen to everything.
Wow.
And if it was a good record, I played it. Try walking into a radio station today without an appointment, even if you can get an appointment. But I had a purely open door policy. I would be out, the kids would come on my show. We did this thing called the High Five. Different high schools would come on, and colleges would come on and play their 5 most requested songs. And sometimes there would be a song that would pop up, and I'm like, "What the hell is that?" Bataram is a prime example. They kept
wow, that's a great song.
We want Bataram, and so after 4 or 5 schools were like, they wanted to hear Bataram. How do I find this record? Because it wasn't out yet. And oh yeah, that's Toddy T. He sells out of his car. Go over there in Inglewood on, I forget the name of the street. And so I drove over there, and sure enough, he had his lid popped open selling cassettes.
No, good for him.
I said, "Man, I keep hearing about this song you did, Bataram." "Oh yeah, oh okay. So here, I'll sell you a copy." He didn't give it to me. I bought a copy and went back to the station and played it, and it exploded. So I would hear about music many different ways. There was no exact science to it, but the exact science to it was that I was so plugged into everything that came out.
That's amazing too. And I mean, there's so many great acts going back to the Barry Whites, Isaac Hayes and everything. And then up through, we're getting into, because you are the godfather of West Coast rap. I mean, that's one of many titles that you have. And that's another thing I think where Mike and I got into hip hop at that era. So you started hearing the Eazy-E, the NWA, and just the role you had in that. I mean, can you elaborate on being there when those moments happened?
We were doing, I'll tell you how Eazy and I first met. We were doing the club. See, a lot of people don't know that we were very, after Barry White, thank you, we were very sensitive to certain gang areas. So we would do Skateland USA, where we'd have dances. That was the blood area, and Dudos. And then we would do World on Wheels. That was the Crip area. Skateland USA was for the Hispanic gang area. And then we did the 321 Club in Santa Monica for the white people that wouldn't go to any of the other clubs because they were scared. And then Casa Camino Real was more like neutral territory. And we broadcast live from all of these places. And one night when I'm at the Casa, Dr. Dre comes by. He says, "Man, I started this new project. I want you to hear this new kid that, he's my partner now, and we did a song." And so I looked over, and his little short guy, Jerry curl. I was like, "Oh, okay. This is Eazy-E." And I said, "Oh, nice to meet you, Eazy." I said, "Oh, cool. Well, let's take a break. I'm gonna go outside." We go outside, sat in my car, and I popped the cassette in, and it was Boys in the Hood.
Nice.
And I said, that's pretty good. I said, "But Dre, you got to go clean it up." as opposed to rappers today, I always made them do a radio version, which means you got to go back in the studio. You can do all your cussing and all that, but then give me a radio version where you substitute a word for that cuss word.
No beeps. You
And
gotta
yeah,
substitute.
I didn't like the
Mm.
beeps and blah blah blah. And the parents used to tell me they appreciated it because their kids were going to sing that bad word whether you bleeped it or not. But if you give them another word, they'll sing that. So less than 24 hours later, Drake comes down to the station. He said, "Here you go, man. I cleaned it up." And we put it on the air. I think within 24 hours is our most requested song. And it just took off from there.
Such an amazing story,
that
such
is
an amazing track, and
phenomenal.
that's one of those records too that I remember cruising Bristol and Santa Ana.
Mhm.
Was the one you heard bumping a lot
Oh, everybody
Yeah.
was
in the
bumping
cars.
that one. That
All the
like
cars,
that was like the anthem. That was like one of those summer anthems. You know what I mean? Boom, boom,
Mhm,
bang.
mhm.
Even when you hear that little beat in the background when it's starting, you're like, was Suge Knight
Yeah.
the scariest person you ever met before Greg Mack or what?
He didn't scare me. I think that. Well, I mean, we had a. I wouldn't say run-ins, but we had a couple of situations.
Running.
I personally think that Suge Knight was very instrumental in making the music industry better for Black artists. So
Hmm.
I have a lot of admiration and respect for him. And I wasn't, you know, so excited about his tactics, but um, I I just think that he changed the way Black artists were treated. So to that, I say I admire him. Now, did he do a lot of stupid things? Probably. Did we have issues at one time? Yes, we did. Uh, I'll save that for my
Your
podcast.
podcast, yeah. You put that on your podcast. Don't
Because
feel bad. You're giving us a
if
lot of
I'm going to
gold
get
already.
beat up, if I'm going to get beat up, I want to get paid for it.
Hey, you've given us so much gold. Like, I mean, is your mind blown, Adley?
There's just so many great stories that come out of the K Day and the Greg Mack story, and so many memories for me just growing up and stuff. And I really, I was one of those kids. I think even at a young age, I was like, I want to do radio, but K Day, Greg Mack just solidified that. Like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I
Yeah.
got turntables. I want to be a mixer. I want to mix and scratch, do all that stuff, and I want to be on the air. And it all came. I mean, that sealed the deal when I was like, K Day, Greg Mack bringing this new style that I would take dates to and then to the
Yeah,
parking lot
over
to
at
listen
Tommy's.
to this stuff. I'd be, I mean, that was just the inspiration, the motivation. And being in Orange County, though, we're south of all the action and stuff too. So we
Hmm.
didn't really have clubs like that, but we had some clubs. But we'd still venture up to like World on Wheels or whatever, and just be like, let's go for it, man. I take my Volkswagen bus with the crew and like J Rock from the Beat Junkies. He was one of my homies growing up and stuff, and we just go for it, man. And Mike
Hmm.
remembers too going to see the concerts, like when the Beastie Boys, Run DMC would roll through town on a concert. It was K Day where you first heard the stuff, and then now you're seeing these
Yeah, now you're
shows
seeing Public Enemy.
to,
You're
to
seeing
Orange
Public
County.
Enemy and Stetson
Yeah.
Sonic. It's like, oh man,
Hmm.
this is phenomenal. Real quick, I
Mm.
want to. I'm really interested on that perspective of Suge Knight taking care of the black artist because I never thought about that before. But you're absolutely right. Like because we did a bunch of stories about how artists got took in that time frame. They'd give them a wad of cash and then that's it. No points on the record. Like. I mean, like you are correct. Black artists were being A, taken advantage of, and B, marginalized in the sense that like these are giant artists and radio stations weren't playing them.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
but I never thought about that about Suge, like showing him the respect. I don't know, and that shows how great a guy Greg Mack is, because he could
Yeah.
just clown him and we'd believe everything he said. If he was like, his feet smell, blah blah blah, we'd be like, go ahead, Greg. Oh,
No, Suge, like I said, he was a necessary evil for music.
Mm.
Um, and I totally disagree with a lot of the things that he did. But you know what? If you look at the outcome, I'll tell you one thing. It was funny because at that time you could walk into any record company; it was no big deal. But after he started doing his thing, there was security
Metal
everywhere.
detectors.
Even today, is so much security. Even at radio stations, there's security everywhere. But he changed the game. You know, he you know. didn't follow what was supposed to be, and he was a renegade, and I got to admire that because I'm a sharpshooter. I don't play the game to just win. I'm trying to destroy you. If I'm
Yeah.
on the air, if I'm on the air against you, I'm trying to take you down,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and we can go have a drink afterwards. you know, we can go have a drink, have dinner, but the next day I'm gonna be back at you.
That's perfect. I try to live by that too, because obviously Bakersfield's a smaller market than LA, but there's still some crosstown battling. But I'm like, hey, when we're on the air, the game is on. But after the game, well, we can hang. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
when it's
we can go
game
have a
time,
drink.
when it's game time, we're going head to head. Yeah, no doubt about that. So that's awesome, man.
Greg Mack, what was Prince like?
Prince used to come to my birthday. Every time I'd have a birthday party, Prince would come. He would never speak to me. Um, I would usually be on stage saying whatever, and I'd say, "Thank you, Prince, for coming." But by the time I would try and get over to the table to thank him, he'd be gone. But his bodyguard, who's a good friend of mine named Coco, he would tell me what Prince would say.
This is
Uh, he,
crazy.
he said, Prince really likes you, blah, blah, blah. I used to get Prince's music before anybody in the world because I had a friend at Warner Brothers Record, attorney friend, Dan Stewart. And so Dan was working at Warner at the time. So he would actually get me the acetate. For those of you that don't know, that's what they press the vinyl with. I would have the acetate before anybody in the world, and I cart them up. We'd put them on a cart. Back then, that's what we
Oh my
played.
gosh.
And you would think Prince would send me a cease and desist, but he actually kind of knew where I was getting it, and he kind of liked it. And so I was breaking Prince, all of his artists. He sent Vanity Six over to visit me with nothing on but a damn camisole.
Oh my goodness.
She walks in and she said, Prince said, thank you. And I'm like, yeah, he's welcome.
A nice looking young lady.
Vanity and I became very good friends. I spoke to her right before she passed, and she was preaching. She was a preacher, and she had given her life to the Lord.
God bless her. That's good.
Wow, great.
Yeah.
But this story about Prince is like you couldn't write a better story about Prince. That like he was an admirer of yours and then spoke to you through a different person. Like you couldn't write that. You know what I mean?
He wouldn't talk to me. I interviewed him when I was in Houston. I went to one of his concerts backstage to do an interview with him, and so it was the weirdest thing. He'd sit there and he'd look at me, and I would ask him a question. He'd whisper the answer in his manager's ear, and his manager would tell me the answer. And so I said, well, why does he do it that way? He said, because if you misquote him, he can honestly say, I didn't say that.
Smart.
True story.
Was he the most eccentric person you ever met?
Ooh, man, this business, the record business is a very dirty business. I was actually an artist, doing compilation albums on MCA Records in Motown. And the record business is a dirty business. It's really cutthroat. There's things behind the scenes that could get you killed. I'm not a big fan of. I admire the people that do it and that are successful with it. That's great. It's just I've learned throughout the years to stay in my lane. Okay,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
stay in radio.
Yeah.
And I'm learning this film business. And
Well, that's got to be rough too. I bet you there's a bunch of criminals in that one too.
you know what? From what I've seen so far, everybody's pretty cool.
Everybody's on the up and up.
I'll assume I'll run into. I'm working with some pretty talented guys. Kip Conweiser and Kern Conweiser, the Conweiser brothers. They had a movie out that won so many awards, Miss Evers Boys, and they've done a lot of projects. And so they are the ones that are leading me through this maze. And so when I have to deal with drama, I just ask them, so what are they really saying? So they kind of educate me on what's really going on.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, and I want to can we go like with the Dr. Dre? I mean, you were there, groundbreaking when Eazy-E came out, and then even the next steps like the NWA, the Snoop Dogg. I mean, were you breaking records at that time still with Snoop, or was that have you moved on from K-Day?
Snoop was a new jack when I
When you're bouncing, yeah.
Snoop came out in the early '90s. Most of what we did at 1580 was over by '90. Um,
Okay.
although talking to Snoop, he's like you guys. He's oh man, I grew up listening to you. Da 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 da. I'm gonna see Snoop this weekend,
In
but
Bakersfield, we'll see him here.
yeah. But he he I can't say enough about him. He has transformed uh, everything that I wanted to see happen in hip hop. I mean, I was excited. I was excited when Will Smith got his TV show and Queen Latifah and LL Cool J, and uh, you have to understand seeing those little things on TV that start to see commercials, and you got Yo MTV Raps, and just seeing this seed that you planted just blooming, and it's still blooming today, and people are making billions. And
Oh yeah, cake.
I'm just sitting here in awe. And people say, well, aren't you mad because you didn't get rich? Well, I did get rich. I got rich off of knowing that I created something that a lot of people of color, not just blacks or Hispanics or Asian, but people of color have been able to benefit from this genre of music. And it's when we really started putting out hip hop, the mom and pop record stores were the only stores that would carry it. The majors wouldn't carry it at that time, so it benefited them. Kids that probably would have ended up dead or in gangs or in jail are now major hip hop stars. Record companies that were looking for a different way to go, now they're making billions off of the hip hop world. And people always say, well, what do you think about the new hip hop? I says, well, you know what? I listen to it. I try and understand it. And I think it's fantastic. Deep inside, I'm like, I wish they didn't use so much damn auto tune.
I mean, I wouldn't listen. I'm too old, man. It's not for me anymore. I'm too old. I've gotten past it.
Well, see, that's the thing. When you start not understanding it, or you start putting down a culture as opposed to listening to it and trying to understand it and get it, that's when you are getting old. And so I don't want to get old yet.
Yeah, no, you're younger.
Let it
than
be and
me,
enjoy it
Greg,
for
man.
what
Don't-
it is.
Don't feel
I'm
bad.
trying to understand it, and I also know that that's what everybody listens to, adults too. So
Yeah.
We-
one thing
you
you
gave
learn
us a
about radio
culture.
is you got to be in tune with what's going on.
Yeah.
You gave us a culture, Greg Mack, and
Mhm.
like that, like being a young kid from LA. It's like you don't have there's not a lot of there wasn't a lot of urban anything at that time. You had Tom Cruise and everything was kind of whitewashed, and then giving an urban culture that wasn't, hey, you're a criminal. It's, hey, this is you. This is your culture and you're not a criminal. That's what you gave us, man. And you do not know how much I respect you for that. But I do want to ask you one real quick question about Salt and Pepper. So first of all, what were they like? Because this is back when they were real good looking. God bless them. My wife's the most beautiful woman in the whole world. However, Salt and Pepper was very good looking at the time. What were they like? And then I'd like you to tell us about that B cut that you introduced us all to.
Yeah, they had put out a song called Tramp. And like I said, I didn't go by the rules. I said, the B-side's better. Yeah, but we need your help. Well, we'll play both. And so I started playing the B-side, and it was called Push It. And
Man.
push it. After about 6 months of us blowing it up, then everybody flipped it. But I met Salt and Pepper in New York. I think I was out at the New Music Seminar they used to have out there, and I met them. And all I can say is they were just very nice, very cordial, very sweet. I didn't know them personally. Obviously, they're going to be sweet to me. I'm the guy blowing up their record.
You're the one that broke the biggest song in the world.
Yes.
Know?
Oh yeah.
But they were very nice. Like I said, there's different sides to these guys, and that's one of the reasons I've never really wanted to hang with them,
Oh.
because I like to keep my vision of them a certain way. There's very few that I maintain relationships with all the time. Just yesterday, I'm sitting here working in my office, and FaceTime pops up, which I don't like answering if I'm not looking good. But it was Bobby Brown, and so he was out in New York, for his premiere of his new series. Him and his beautiful wife. Hey, we were just checking on you, see how you're doing, and
Wow.
and I was like, oh wow, okay, cool, I appreciate it. Yeah, Bobby cut his hair off, so now he's bald like you. He showed me his bald head. But they're one of the few that I still, there's a few that I still keep relationships with, but it's nothing but love when we see each other. It's just that we all have busy lives,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's really that simple.
I was gonna say I would like to have a friend like Greg Mack if I was Bobby Brown. You know, during all the turmoil that he went through in those like mid '90s
Yeah.
and early 2000s, like I would like to have a friend like Greg Mack to be able to turn to, being a shining light. You know, so what a blessing, man. But
Bobby's a good kid. He's a good kid.
Yeah.
He
Great
you know,
artist.
he lost his way for a minute, but he's a good kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Hey, and I just want to. I know we're running out of time,
yeah,
but another thing I was thinking about. You think West Coast hip hop and rap and stuff. There's a whole nother side too. There's still like the Delicious Final, right?
oh
Then the
yeah,
Tone Loc, and then the young
Young
MC, the
MC,
Def Jeff,
yeah,
all those
oh
guys too.
yeah,
And those are ones that you think about too. How huge those records were back then,
Mhm.
but get kind of overshadowed at this point. But those were groundbreaking. I mean, Wild Thing, huge. You know what I
my
mean?
It's
name's
kind
Busted
of like
You.
Young.
it's kind of like if you just name an artist, I have a story. Okay,
Yeah,
there's
Yeah.
a story behind every one of them, you know.
Let's
And
hear the Tone Loc, Young MC story.
Tone Loc, well, Young MC wrote, his hits,
Mm.
uh, and so Young MC was the genius writer of the time, and so he, if I'm correct, he came out before Tone Loc.
yeah,
But Tone Loc, God, I can't say, he was just cool. Uh, I think the producers of some of his stuff were called the Dust Brothers.
oh
And
wow,
so
Mm.
they had kind
Mm.
of introduced me, and I met him through the record label and blah, blah, blah. And Tone just, he's one of the people I still stay in touch with a lot. You
really?
know, he's a real good guy. Um, I didn't quite understand, with his voice being that way. I was like, is this going to work?
Yeah.
But once the Dust Brothers got his songs, I was like, oh wow. And then when I saw the video, Wild Thing, I'm like, okay, okay. But Tone is another one of those good people. All these guys, and it frustrates me sometimes when they're like, oh, these gang members and blah blah. You know what? Some of them may have had to do what they had to do to get to where they're at, but they're not. A lot of that stuff they rap about is a reflection of what their friends are dealing with.
Mm.
They didn't drive up on somebody or something.
Yeah.
Their
Yeah.
their friend did it, and they wrote it to parallel that. And a lot of the battles you hear going on in these songs, I've been in the studio with certain rappers, and they're saying, "Okay, I'm gonna talk about your mama, you talk about my sister, blah 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 blah." And so then we're gonna create this, and everybody's gonna dislike you because of that. And then I'm gonna come back with this, and they know
Wow.
it sells records. And I've been in the studio where they planned it out, and it worked like clockwork because
Wow.
Amazing.
you
Oh my
know
gosh.
where
Are
they
there any
got it,
are there any
where they
names
got
that,
into where they got into trouble with it is when the audience started believing it
oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
actually started, wanting to beat them up and stuff. But
Do you want to tell us any names of an orchestrated battle, or are you saving that for your podcast? And I
yeah,
don't
I'm gonna
blame you if
say
you are.
that. I'm gonna
Okay,
say that.
okay, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. You know I'm
There's
trying to dig, right? I keep digging. But you've
but
been
you,
you've
you
been
can
very
never
generous.
dig deep enough. We don't have that long.
I know you've been very generous, though. I'll be honest with you, man. I like my mind is like so blown right now that like I feel like I'm gonna sleep like a baby tonight. You know what I mean? Because I still like I'm thinking about the Beastie Boys. I'm thinking about Rick Rubin. I'm thinking about, you know what I mean. There's just so much. You are my childhood, sir. So like everything. I loved music when I was a kid. Music would take me away from all the sorrow, my folks fighting, my neighbors fighting, people getting their cars repoed, like all that stuff, you know what I mean? Music would take me out of that and put me in this beautiful place. And my goodness, man, you played me, Mr. Greg Mack, you played some of the most beautiful music to me when I was a kid. Including that Everlasting Bass, which is such a
Oh
wonderful
wow.
song
Yeah.
by Rodney and Joe Cooley. Can you tell us
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
first time you heard that, and then we'll do one news story and close the show? Can you tell us about the first time you heard
I
Everlasting
think I
Bass?
think Joe Cooley had asked me if he could play it on the show, and I listened to it, and I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And it just kind of happened.
Oh, really?
I think that him and Rodney O were, they were on fire. you
Yeah.
know, Joe has always been, always drove the pimped out car, always had the wave hair going. He always kind of kept me up to date on what's hip. Although
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't drive the kind of cars he's driving. I certainly didn't do the wave thing in my hair, but you know, I we were like family. All these guys, and I'd still like to think, even though I'm sure that there's probably some sour grapes somewhere, and I do hear about them sometimes, and it kind of hurts me because all I've ever tried to do is be nice to everybody. And so sometimes things in this business, it can get distorted, it can get twisted around. It's just like I was telling Adley, and he was like, you got dirt on people, da 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 da. Well, I don't really hear dirt. I'm just a positive person. I keep it
Good.
happy, and I think that if I were more of an asshole, I'd probably be wealthy. But because I'm not exciting, because I'm just a regular guy, you know.
Man,
But
you're a fascinating guy, bro. Don't talk,
Yeah.
don't sell short my
no,
hero.
no, you know what I mean. You know what I
But
mean. I don't
but
like I told you before the thing. I don't feel above anybody. I definitely don't feel below anybody. I'm just like you, man.
but not getting swallowed up to me, like you had to be grounded in the Lord, like, I'm not trying to make it religious, but there's no way outside of being grounded in God, not getting swept up into that. There's
I'm,
just
I'm
no
Christian. I'm
way.
Christian. I'm Christian from within. I don't go to church. I don't read the Bible, although I should. But I don't get caught up in having to show somebody, oh, I go out and sleep with all these women on Saturday night, but I go to church on Sunday because God will forgive me.
Yeah.
No, I'm a
Mm.
Christian within, and I try and practice Christianity. Now, in my 20s and 30s, I had a wild side too. Don't get me wrong. Okay, I mean, there's some women that will step forward and may cancel me. I don't know, but my point is that we all went through as part of growing up. You go and you do stupid things. You hurt people, and I was so focused on making this radio station work that I think I did hurt some. I don't think I know I hurt some people because I didn't give them the time. And even today, I'm a workaholic. I've kind of cut it down from 18 hours a day to 16 hours a day. But my typical day is about a 16-hour day every day. Sunday's the only day that I will try. I try and relax on Sundays.
That's why I like to go to church on Sunday, Greg Mack, because when I'm at church, I just keep praying, Lord, take this out of my head, take this out of my head, take this out. Because I'm not like you. You hustle harder than me, but I hustle hard. And so it's always churning, it's always churning.
Mhm.
So my goodness, what a blessing this has been. This has been one little slice of heaven for me. What about you, Adley?
I love this, and I've still got a bank of questions. So hopefully you'll come back on with this,
Yeah, hopefully we
Greg,
didn't
because
bother you, Greg
we
Mack.
got
And I
to do this.
apologize if we
Yeah.
did, but let's just do a quick news story with Greg Mack. He'll probably know the person, unfortunately, so we can't make fun of them. But we'll do a news story with Greg Mack, and we crack wise on it. Greg Adley reads it to us, and we crack wise.
Yeah, and I want to go with it. Actually, we'll go with a cool one because it's Snoop Dogg, and this is pretty cool. The headline is Snoop Dogg buys big ownership in Ice Cube's Big Three League. So Snoop Dogg and his Mount Westmore groupmate Ice Cube are about to be a lot closer now that Snoop is part owner in Cube's Big Three basketball league. Snoop and PayPal co-founder Ken Howery dropped 625 grand together to purchase a 40% stake in Big Three team Bivouac. That went winless last season due to injuries. So now the Big Three opened the floodgates for people to grab a stake in the franchise team through NFTs, which is exactly what Snoop and Ken did. And they weren't the only ones either. Popular NFT hubs, The Gods, Gary Vaynerchuk, and VFriends Bill Lee from My Dogecoin, they all got together and got this. And I just want to check in with you guys. How cool is it to see the rappers like this go into other businesses and build stuff together? How awesome is that?
Working together, I think, is the dope part.
And
too.
that, yes.
That's one thing I've always respected about Cube. And Greg Mack, you know the guy, so you can tell him if you ever see him that this is what I respect about him. I've always respected that he would bring black comedians that you hadn't heard of and put them in his movies. You know what I mean? And like really give a showcase for that working within the community. That was the first thing I respect about Ice Cube. Next thing I respect about Snoop Dogg is that he flipped these NFTs on Cube so he could have a piece of this team.
Mhm. Yeah, Cube is a very good friend, um, and so is Snoop. I think that them coming together like that is exciting to see. I can tell you this though, that I've always been drilling. I did an editorial in Billboard magazine back in 1991, and I was simply saying that if you guys really want to control your destiny, buy a damn radio station. You have rock stars that own radio stations. There are Spanish stars, country stars, R&B. Look at Stevie Wonder. But there's never been one rapper to own a radio station. If you want to control your destiny, you're being played by every station across the world, and you don't own one damn station. So that's been a dream of mine. I don't care if it's with me, but I would really like to see that trajectory change.
Would you say that owning a radio station in 2022 is still a viable option? I mean, I feel like radios, it's such a hard market, except for the giant markets at this stage.
That's a very good point. But yes, I do. Because if enough rappers do it, you can really change the game. You got to understand they're making a lot of money off of your music.
Yeah.
And so if you control your music and you control that station, there's ways, I think that there's just this, the corporate world with radio, which I anticipate within a few years will change. And let me explain it this way. Whenever a club starts to go down, first they won't let anybody in, right? You gotta dress like this, you gotta look like this, blah blah blah. But then when they start to go down, people of color become the promoters. Then they allow it, right? So I see radio when it starts to go down, people of color, all of a sudden they'll bring back the minority tax certificate and other things that will allow the people that they wouldn't allow in before get into the game. And then they'll get some kind of huge tax break, so it'll work out for them. But when that does happen, if not before, I would just like to live to see that happen once before I go off into this other venture in life. To see one rapper just own one.
Greg Mack, do you own any NFTs or crypto?
I do, and I'm real disappointed.
I didn't buy crypto. I was like, I pulled all my money out of the market in 2020, and I sat and watched everybody get fat and da-da-da-da-da. And then I was like, there's got to be a crash. And I just sat there with cash and sat there with cash, sat there with cash. So now I'm waiting for the bottom to buy a radio station because Greg Mack says that's what you're supposed to do.
Hey, can we do a couple shout outs from the comments real quick?
That'd be nice.
Before we wrap up.
And then close up. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll wrap it up. I know Craig's a busy man here. But Tim Moe ask him about the Outlaw Posse.
Yeah, I was hanging out with David Faustino. He played Bundy. He was Bud Bundy on Married with Children.
Right. What's going on here? Why did that sound familiar when I saw it?
It was Grandmaster B. And matter of fact, they're getting ready to do it again, but it's going to be animated. But he was a big fan of mine. I was hanging out with him the other day because I was filming a documentary that he's doing on a club that was really popular in Hollywood. But anyway, when I was signed to Motown, he had approached me about doing a project. Him and his buddies, Bobby Jacoby, and I actually
was this when they were on Married with Children?
Yes,
and Bobby Jacoby was like doing bit parts in those teen movies.
Right.
Okay.
So they formed a little group called Outlaw Posse. And I said, this could be a good angle, and the track is actually very good. And so, yeah, that was
was it a joke rap group or
was
it
a serious
real
group?
rap?
Wasn't
was
it
a real rap
group?
It
was like a boy band rap group. That's the best way to explain it.
Was there any traction in this thing? I've never heard of this record before.
You know what? There wasn't any track. I only had one artist that exploded. It was MC Trouble. And on the compilation album, she just exploded. But the other ones, and I have my thoughts on that, but that would take a while.
This is Thought Rod. This is Skeet from the Hated out in Tucson. Just says, fellas. Gavin said, hey, guys.
Hey, Gavin.
Leilani Shu, you know her from Def Jam for a long time.
She's the sweetest.
She's so nice, awesome. Isn't she? She came on the show.
Yeah. She sends me pictures when she's out doing the Star Wars thing now.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, J-Mo, legendary. Talking about you, Greg.
I'm glad Joe Moreno got to watch.
Yeah, Sal Hernandez, Greg Mack, and K-Day, the greatest.
Hey, Sal.
Matt Maldonado, this is a good one. Respect.
Thank you.
He's living out in Vegas now. Thank you. DJ Wifey, one of our favorites. She works over the Groove with me. Hello, Mr. Mack. Yeah,
DJ Wifey. Good DJ, she's awesome. Too.
Amazing DJ, and her husband's amazing too.
Herb Mason, what's up, guys? Much love and respect to Mike Adley and Mr. Greg Mack. Look at that.
Thank you, Herb.
Nice. And Mark says, 1580 K-Day, all love. You all were right up the street at one point in time in the Crenshaw district. Was sad when y'all had to close. However, now to the future and beyond.
You know what? We didn't. We had a sales satellite office there. We never broadcasted. A lot of people had the misconception that we were broadcasting.
Oh, okay. So you weren't. This was an office in
That was
Crenshaw.
a sales office. Uh-huh.
Okay. Very cool. And then just thanks for all for all your crew and you have continued to do. There you go. Thanks, Mark. And Louis, here's another Louis V. This is one of our DJs too.
Louis!
Boo Jaden.
His son Jaden does little videos where he's singing to my syndicated show, the Greg Mack Show.
Oh, really?
Nice. Yeah. Very cool. So
that's cool.
With
man.
that, man, what a great
Greg
show.
Mack, I know, best show we've had. Absolutely 100%. Nothing
Thanks,
but
dude.
respect for you, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to
Yes.
two young guys. We're not even young, man. I mean, my whole childhood, Greg Mack, I owe to you, and I can't thank you enough. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. We got 6,500 now, and like Adley always says, over 100 or over 1 million views.
Ooh, another shout out. Rascal.
Oh, Rascal.
Yeah.
Rascal out of Phoenix. That's my boy. What's up,
Nice.
Rascal?
Dude, Rascal's the guy that got us into radio, Greg
Yeah,
Mack.
we
He's
worked
the
at
one that-
worked Art LeBeau with us. Art
Yeah,
LeBeau
he got us
station,
our
yeah.
jobs. Yeah.
Great guy. I like Rascal.
So- all right, guys, but thank you so much. Don't forget, subscribe to us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that stuff. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much, Mr. Greg Mack.
All right.